Everyone. Good morning, fellow Morganites, faculty, staff, and distinguished guests. Welcome to the 2018 Frederick Douglass Convocation. My name is Michaela Scott, and I serve as the senior class president for the 2017-2018 academic school year. Frederick Douglass once said, "If there is no struggle, there is no progress." Those who profess to favor freedom and yet depreciate agitation are men who want crops without plowing up the ground. They want rain without thunder and lightning. They want the ocean without the awful roar of its many waters. This struggle may be a moral one, or it may be a physical one, or it may be both moral and physical, but it must be a struggle. Power concedes nothing without a demand. It never did, and it never will. The relationship between progress and struggle is imperative to our matriculation, not only at Morgan State University, but our journey through life. This quote made me understand that it's okay to struggle, but during that time, it's crucial to persevere in order to progress and excel. Frederick Douglass exemplified progress through struggle throughout his lifetime. From education to freedom, he worked tireless nights to become one of the most famous intellectuals of his time. Today, we exemplify some amazing attributes of Frederick Douglass through musical selections and more. Again, thank you all for attending the 2018 Frederick Douglass Convocation. And at this moment, I would like to introduce Reverend Bernard Kills, who will be giving the invocation.
In times like these, we need to pray. And what better invocation than the words of Frederick Douglass himself? O wise and amiable God, may we hear with defining clarity this morning the prayers lifted up by Frederick Douglass in his prayer in search of freedom. You are loose from your mooring and are free. I am fast in my chains, and I am a slave. You move merrily before the gentle gale, and I sadly before the blood whip. You are freedom's swift-winged angels that fly around the world. I am confined in bands of iron. Oh, that I were free. Oh, that I were on one of your gallant decks and under your protecting wings. Alas, betwixt me and you, the turbid waters roll. Go on, go on. Oh, that I could also go, but I but swim. If I could fly, for was I was born a man of whom to make a brute. The glad ship is gone. She hides in the dim distance. I am left in the hottest hell of unending slavery. God save me. God deliver me. Let me be free in there. Is there any God? Why am I a slave? I will run away. I will not stand it. I will not get caught or get clear. I'll try it. I has as well die with ague as the fever. I have only one life to lose. I had as well be killed running as die standing. Only think of it, 150 miles straight north, and I'm free. Yes, God helping me, I will be free. Amen.
Good morning, Morganites and guests, visitors. Now, I know that if Frederick Douglass was here this morning, he would say, I need to see the people. And right now, the people are so far away that we can't see you. So I'm gonna ask that you indulge us by kind of moving down. And for one reason is that we want to be able to see you and talk to you. So we're asking you all to come down in the middle aisle and just kind of be with us a little bit, because you're so far back. Plus, the choir is going to come and render several selections. And I know if they come out and they see all that space right here in the middle, that their voices are going to start cracking, they're going to forget the words, they're not going to feel the spirit. And we know we have a well-renowned choir, so we need to be able to feel the spirit. So we just want you all to come on down and be one with all of us, okay? We really do appreciate you. Amen. Come on, give yourselves a round of applause. Come on. All righty. And let me begin by saying good morning to all of our faculty, staff, students, and alumni that may be in attendance, as well as my colleagues on the stage and our keynote speaker, Dr. Ray Winbush. It gives me great pleasure to welcome all of you to our Frederick Douglass Convocation. I also want to congratulate the class of 2018 for sponsoring this event and staying true to the goals that they set when they entered 4 years ago. I would be remiss if I didn't let you know that Dr. Wilson wishes that he could be here this morning, but he is out doing what he does best, and that's advocating and championing the mission of Morgan State University. Now, a little audience participation here. I want you to look to your right and say, tell them we are rising.
Tell them we are rising.
Come on now. Now I want you to look to your left and say, tell them we are rising.
Tell them we are rising.
Okay. If you haven't heard about this great documentary, Director Stanley Nelson hosted a screening of this documentary at Morgan State last semester at our School of Communications and Global Journalism. It was outstanding. I wanted to bring this to your attention because the documentary will air on PBS this coming February 19th at 9:00 p.m. And I implore you all to check it out. It's about the history of HBCUs and the relevancy of HBCUs and the reason why we stand here 150 years later to celebrate this great institution. In closing, I want to remind everyone that we are part of greatness and we must never, ever forget this. I also want to remind all of you that we must continuously reflect our core values at all times. Our 6 core values, you know them. We say them every time we come together. It's leadership, integrity, innovation, diversity, respect, and excellence. That's right, excellence. Excellence at all times. You know, I'm kind of big, so I was a student. I'm calling myself an athlete right now, and I thought I could play a little football. But I had a coach that once said that perfection, running the perfect play is impossible. Why? Because the other team is trying to stop you. And they're trying to do the perfect defense against the perfect offense. So he said, perfection is not attainable, but if we chase perfection, guess what? We can catch excellence. And I'm saying to each and every one of you, let's keep chasing excellence. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Banks. Next, we will have a musical selection from the Morgan State University Choir.
Good morning. We're going to sing for you 2 selections. First, a composition by Cedric Dent. You may know his name because he was one of the members of Take 6, entitled Examine Me. And the second selection is going to be a spiritual. I'm going to sing till the Spirit moves in my heart, arranged by Moses Hogan.
gonna sing till the Spirit moves in my heart. I'm gonna sing till the Spirit moves in my heart. I'm gonna sing till the Spirit moves in my heart. I'm gonna sing till Jesus comes. I'm gonna sing, oh my Jesus, 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 till he comes. Oh my Jesus, 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 till he comes. Oh yeah, my Lord. Oh yes, my Lord. Oh yes, my Lord. Hallelujah. Say, oh my Jesus, 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 oh my Jesus. Can't you feel the Spirit move? Can't you feel it moving? Can't you feel it moving? Oh my Jesus, 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 till he comes. Oh my Jesus, 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 till he comes. I'm gonna sing till my Jesus
Can we get another round of applause for the Morgan State University Choir? I would now like to introduce Marcus Bennett, who serves as the student government president, to introduce our guest speaker.
Good morning. Dr. Raymond Arnold Winbush, aka Takari Bioko, is an African-American scholar and activist known for his systems thinking approaches to understanding the impact of racism, while white supremacy on the global African-American community. He earned a bachelor's and master's and doctoral degrees in psychology from Oakwood College, now Oakwood University in Huntsville, Alabama, and the University of Chicago, respectively. Dr. Winbush has taught at Oakwood College, Alabama A&M University, Peabody College, and Vanderbilt University, where he became an assistant provost. He is the author of 3 books. He's the author of 3 books, He's the author of 3 books, Belinda's Petition, A Concise History of Reparations for the Transatlantic Slave Trade in 2009, another book called Should America Pay? Slavery and the Raging Debate on Reparations in 2003, and The Warrior Method, a program for rearing healthy Black boys in 2000. His writings, consultations, and research has been instrumental in understanding the developmental stages in Black males, public policy, and its connectedness to compensatory justice. Relationships between Black males and females, infusion of African studies into schools' curriculum, and the impact of hip-hop culture on the contemporary African-American landscape. Dr. Winbush research established numerous projects to raise awareness of America's race relations and their impact upon the lives of Black people. He received grants to further his work for the National Science Foundation, the Cleveland Foundation, Job Training Partnerships Act of 1982, West African Research Association, Pitney Bowes Incorporated, the Ford Motor Company, and the Kellogg Foundation. Dr. Winbush's consultations, research, and speaking appearances on CNN, BET, and Oprah Winfrey Show have currently sits on the advisory board of the Journal of Black Studies of Africological Perspectives. He is currently the research director and the director of the Institute of Urban Research here at Morgan State University. Ladies and gentlemen, give me a round of applause for Dr. Raymond Winbush.
Good morning, everyone. Okay, you can do better than that. Help a brother out. Good morning, everyone. Good morning. Platform guests, I think I was first contacted by Ms. Williams. Is that correct? Or Ms. Scott? Yes, Ms. Scott. And let's give all of you yourselves a round of applause for being able to graduate in 2018. Wherever I go, I keep track of the internet, as most of us do, and I just got this bulletin from Fox News. It says the library of President Donald J. Trump is just burned to the ground. Both, I repeat, both of his books have been lost in the fire. And it is reported that the confused president is very distraught since he had not finished coloring the second one. Now, I know I offended somebody in this audience, but that's an example of fake news. And one of the things that you have to do as students is to make sure you know what is true and what is false, and be aware of what is a lie when somebody is telling you. So I want to talk about some of that today briefly. I'm not going to hold you long. The other thing, this month, almost to the day, is the 200th birthday of Frederick Douglass. 200 years ago, in February of 1818, Frederick Douglass was born. And I consider him one of the greatest Africans in America who have ever lived. Wherever I go, I tell people that I have 3 beliefs about racism or white supremacy in the world. First, racism is global. It is not confined to the shores of this nation, but permeates all aspects of life on this planet. Secondly, racism is embedded in the social fabric of the United States. It is part of what this country is. Derek Bell, in his important book, Faces at the Bottom of the Well, page 12, says that racism in the United States will never be eliminated because it is part of the social glue that keeps this country together. I don't think that we will ever find or have a time when we say, remember when there was racism, and we don't have that anymore. We see President 45 praising white supremacists, calling the African continent the same name where he tweets every morning. I hope you understand what I just said. And referring to black NFL players as sons of female dogs. Thirdly, if you lie about racism, you will be rewarded. But if you tell the truth about racism in this country, you can be in trouble and actually be killed. If you lie about racism, you can become a justice on the United States Supreme Court. Ask Clarence Thomas. If you lie about racism, you can become advisor to the President of the United States. Ask Omarosa Manigault, who was dragged out of the White House just a couple weeks ago. If you lie about racism, you can become Secretary of Housing and Urban Development. Ask Dr. Ben Carson. Conversely, if you tell the truth about racism, you can be assassinated like Martin Luther King, beaten like Fannie Lou Hamer, or jailed like Nelson Mandela. So today I want to tell the truth as I see it about racism and white supremacy. Frederick Douglass and 3 things you must do as Morgan students now and after you graduate. Frederick Douglass wrote in his autobiography, autobiography that, and this is a quote, when the Hebrews were liberated, they were told to take spoils from the Egyptians. When the serfs of Russia were emancipated, they were given 3 acres of ground upon which they could live and make a living. But not so when our slaves were emancipated. They were sent away empty-handed, without money, without friends, and without a foot of land upon which to stand. Greatness does not come on flowery beds of ease to any people. We must fight to win the prize, Douglas says. No people to whom liberty is given can hold it as firmly and wear it as grandly as those who wrench liberty from the iron hand of the tyrant. The hardships and dangers involved in the struggle give strength and toughness to the character and enable it to stand firm in storm as well as sunshine. I want to echo what Douglas wrote in 1892 and talk about what I consider the most important fight facing Africans in America, and that is the struggle for reparations. All that we have worked for in this nation since 1619 has been to repair the damage done by those who stole us from Africa. We may call it civil rights, we may call it affirmative action, we may call it equity and education, but what it all boils down to is struggling for reparations for African people because of the transatlantic slave trade. A colleague of mine, Sir Hilary Beckles, who's chancellor of the University of West Indies, says that for the past 500 years, what black people have done in this country and the Caribbean is simply try to clean up white people's mess. I am often amused when black people ask me, Dr. Winbush, how can someone as intelligent as you support the radical notion of reparations? I usually answer this question by asking the person, do you support affirmative action? And they usually say yes. I ask them, do you support the justice struggles of Frederick Douglass, Harriet Tubman, Marcus Garvey, Rosa Parks, Martin Luther King, and Malcolm X? And again, they usually reply yes. I then tell the person that all of the people I just named supported reparations. So apparently, so do you by default. So the first thing you must do as a Morgan student is to support the struggle of reparations. You must make sure that repairing the damage done by 250 years of enslavement of our ancestors, 100 years of Jim Crow in the form of segregation, and 60 years of constant struggle against racism in the workforce, the police murders of Sandra Bland, Michael Brown, Corin Gaines, and Freddie Gray is part of your life's work, whatever you do. Secondly, you must be willing to wrestle with Mr. Covey in the struggle for justice. But you ask me, who is Mr. Covey, and why should I wrestle with him? In 1833, Frederick Douglass' so-called master named Captain Thomas thought that Brother Frederick was too uppity on the plantation. See, a lot of times people classified as white say that we're uppity because we defy white supremacy. Ask Colin Kaepernick. And so Douglas's master sent him to a slave breaker named Edward Covey for 1 year. In his autobiography, Douglas writes that Covey was cruel and beat him nearly every day, even though he was obedient to him. One day after a severe beating by Covey that left him bloody and broken, Douglas quietly said to himself that he would never allow Covey to beat him again. I want to quote directly from chapter 10 of Douglas's autobiography on this point. So Douglas says, but whilst thus engaged, whilst in the act of throwing down some blades of curry, he was in the barn from the loft, Mr. Covey entered the stable with a long rope, and just as I was half out of the loft, he caught hold of my legs and was about tying me. As soon as I found what he was up to, I gave a sudden spring, and as I did so, he holding my legs, I was brought sprawling on the stable floor. Mr. Covey seemed now to think he had me and could do what he pleased, but at this moment, from whence came the spirit I don't know, I resolved to fight. Suiting my action to the resolution, I seized Covey hard by the throat. And as I did so, I rose. He held on to me, and I to him. My resistance was so entirely unexpected that Covey seemed taken all aback. He trembled like a leaf. This gave me assurance, and I held him uneasy, causing the blood to run where I touched him with the ends of my fingers. Mr. Covey soon called out to Hughes for help. Hughes came, and while Covey held me, attempted to tie my right hand. While he was in the act of doing so, I watched my chance and gave him a heavy kick close to under his ribs. This kick fairly sickened Hughes. Now, Hughes was black, by the way, so that he left me in the hands of Covey. The kick had the effect of not only weakening Hughes, but Covey also. When he saw Hughes bending over with pain, his courage quailed. He asked me if I meant to persist in my resistance. I told him I did, come what might, and that he had used me like a brute for 6 months, and that I was determined to be used no longer. With that, he strove to drag me to a stick that was lying just out of the stable door. He meant to knock me down, but just as he was leaning over to get the stick, I seized him with both hands by his collar and brought him by a sudden snatch to the ground. By this time, Bill came. He was also black. Covey called him for assistance. Bill wanted to know what he could do. Covey said, "Take hold of him, take hold of him." Bill said his master hired him out to work and not to help to whip me. So he left Covey and myself to fight and wrestle and battle it out. See, there's a difference between Hughes and Bill. Bill said, look, that's your problem. Hughes said, was probably the great-grandfather, Reverend Keels of, probably Clarence Thomas or somebody like that. And he was trying to help the win anyway. So we were at it for nearly 2 hours. We wrestled. Covey at length let me go, puffing and blowing at a great rate, saying that if I had not resisted, he would not have whipped me half so much. The truth was that he had not whipped me at all. I considered him as getting entirely the worst end of the bargain, for he had drawn no blood from me, but I had from him. The whole 6 months afterwards that I spent with Mr. Covey, he never laid the weight of his finger upon my anger. He would occasionally say he didn't want to get hold of me again. No, thought I, you need not, for you will come off worse than you did before. The lesson here, Morganites, is very simple. You must never allow a person to mistreat you when you have done nothing wrong. The idea of turning the other cheek in the face of injustice is a twisted interpretation of the Bible that ignores the fact that the great teacher also cleansed the temple of thieves and crooks. When you allow someone to mistreat you repeatedly, they will continue to do it not only to you, but to others. This is what is going on in the United States now with the occupier of the White House. Notice I have not mentioned his name. He is a bully, and people are allowing him to bully everyone, primarily people of color, especially American Africans and Latinos. Wrestle with Covey, as Douglas did, and they will simply leave you alone. Thirdly, you must have a vision of your world that exceeds what you think you can do. Douglas got the idea of escaping from enslavement every time he saw a ship come into Baltimore's Fells Point Harbor. He dreamed of being on one of those ships and escaped the clutches of Thomas and Covey. And when the opportunity arose, he seized it and escaped to freedom in the North. You must do the same thing. All of you should not only be thinking about graduating from Morgan, but going to graduate, business, medical, or law school. Don't just think about working and settling in the United States, but look beyond these shores to Africa and the Caribbean. Don't just think about working for someone, but think about having people work for you by starting your own business. All of you should have a 5-year plan in mind and construct your life so that you can reach that goal. Above all, think independently about what you want to do in life. So the 3 lessons from Douglas's life are: 1, support reparations for what has happened to African people for the past 500 years. Number 2, don't let people get away with oppressing you. And 3, have a global vision of your life. Think way out of the box that a racist society attempts to confine Africans in America. In closing, I'd like to read something that was written in 1865. This was a letter from an ex-enslaved African named Jordan Anderson. He was living in Dayton, Ohio, and his old so-called master wrote him from a place called Big Spring, Tennessee, and asked him to come back to the plantation. This was right after the Civil War. So I guess his ex-master thought he was crazy or something like that, but he asked him to come back because Jordan was gone. So I'm going to read excerpts from this letter, and then I'm going to close. He says, this is the letter: to my old master, Colonel P.H. Anderson, Big Spring, Tennessee. Sir, I got your letter and was glad to find that you had not forgotten Jordan and that you wanted me to come back and live with you again, promising to do better for me than anybody else. I have often felt uneasy about you. See, black folk call that signifying. You know, he didn't say, you must be crazy to think that I'm coming back or anything like this. He said, I thought the Yankees would have hung you long before this for harboring rebs that they found in your house. I want to know particularly what the good chance is you propose to give me. I am doing tolerably well here in Dayton. I get $25 a month with victuals and clothing. Have a comfortable home for Mandy. The folks here calls her Mrs. Anderson. That's his wife. And he was signifying again because he knew that his former master would never call his wife Mrs. Anderson. And the children, Millie, Jane, and Grundy, go to school and are learning well. As to my freedom, which you say I can have, there is nothing to be gained on that score, as I got my free papers in 1864 from the Provost Marshal General of the Department of Nashville. And doing research for my book on this, found out that that was on the campus of Fisk University, where I used to teach. Mandy says she would be afraid to go back without some proof that you were disposed to treat us justly and kindly. And we have concluded to test your sincerity by asking you to send us our wages for the time we served you. This will make us forget and forgive old scores, reparations, and rely on your justice and friendship in the future. I served you faithfully for 32 years, and Mandy 20 years. At $25 a month for me and $2 a week for Mandy, our earnings would amount to $11,680. The brother had learned to count. Add to this the interest for the time our wages have been kept back, and deduct what you paid for our clothing and 3 doctor's visits to me and pulling a tooth for Mandy, and the balance will show what we are in justice entitled to. Please send the money by Adams Express. I guess that was, Federal Express back in the day, Dr. Banks, something like that. Please send the money by Adams Express in care of V. Winters, Esquire, Dayton, Ohio. He had hired a lawyer. If you fail to pay us for faithful labors in the past, we can have little faith in your promises in the future. We trust the good Maker has opened your eyes to the wrongs which you and your fathers have done to me and my fathers in making us toil for you for generations without recompense. Surely there will be a day of reckoning for those who defraud the labor of his hire, quoting the Bible. In answering this letter, please state if there would be any safety for my Millie and Jane, who are now grown up and both good-looking girls. You know what he was talking about. The first sexual experience of most white males on the slave plantation were with black women. And he asked about this. He said, you know how it was with poor Matilda and Catherine. I would rather stay here and starve and die, if it come to that, than have my girls brought to shame by the violence and wickedness of their young masters. You will also please state if there has been any schools open for the colored children in your neighborhood. Now, you know good and well there was no schools for black kids in Big Spring, Tennessee in 1865, but he asked, the great desire of my life now is to give my children an education and have them form virtuous habits. Say howdy to George Carter and thank him for taking the pistol from you when you were shooting at me, from your old servant, Jordan Anderson. Thank you.
Hello, everybody. Good morning. My name is Heather Guzman. I currently serve as Miss Morgan State University for the 2017-2018 academic school year. Really quickly, we just want to put our hands together one more time for Dr. Wishburn for coming out today and putting those, wonderful words about Frederick Douglass and his life and his legacy into our hearts and minds today. So we just want to thank you so much. We also want to thank everybody in attendance today for coming and the class of 2018 for putting this wonderful convocation together. Our vice president and president. And finally, we just want to give a certificate of appreciation. So if you don't mind standing. Yes. Thank you so much for coming.
Thank you. Now I would like to introduce Ms. Kaya Wright, who will be singing the alma mater.
May we all stand for the singing of the alma mater.
the